So it's been a minute. I've been gone for almost a month. Life just got in the way. I had COVID and a bunch of other stuff happened. But anyway, I'm back. And even though I kind of rushed it because I didn't have a lot of time, I did watch the miniseries We Own This City on HBO Max, which captures the corruption within the Baltimore Police Department and the corruption specifically within the gun trace task force, which was led by, I mean, it was Wayne Jenkins, who was played by Jon Bernthal, but there was another guy, I think his last name was Allers or something. But yeah, the corruption and whatnot involving that particular group, but the corruption within the police department in general, and how nothing ever seems to be fixed no matter what anybody does or what their intentions are, and how it affects both sides of the law, not everyday citizens only, but also those under law enforcement as well, and the Justice Department, and so on and so forth. We Own This City is both produced and written by David Simon, who I believe worked for the Baltimore Sun. I don't know the amount of years specifically, but I do know he worked for the Baltimore Sun if I'm not mistaken, and he's also been a producer and writer for other HBO programs, including The Wire, which to me is the best show I have ever seen. Nothing has come close. And when I saw that he was the writer for this show, I was all for it because the Wire was amazing, and though I find it way better than We Own the City, it's not even close. The Wire was also a normal show that had 5 seasons, and normally it was like 13 episodes ish per season, so it had time to expand and elaborate and go in depth with every single character and storyline, etc., etc. Whereas We Own This City is something that there's a lot of history behind, there's a lot of facts that are involved, but you only have 6 hours to kind of expand upon all that. And it was great the way they did it. It's kind of a non-linear story the way they put it together. It's constantly flashing back between the past and the present, and like different like moments in time, so it's kind of confusing at times, but I love the way they did it. Even though it was a little bit confusing, I tend to like things that aren't linear. It kind of makes my mind work harder. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it makes me enjoy watching it a little more sometimes. But the way they did the show was amazing. But one of the complaints that I did see about it before I watched it was that it was a little bit confusing. And at times for me, it was a little bit confusing. But after a while, I kind of kept track of the timelines and I could tell like at what point they were at. So it became easier, but I can see why it wouldn't really appeal to some people watching it, because keeping track of all these characters and every case and everything going on and then jumping back and forth in time, like it can be very, very misleading to people. And I could understand why people wouldn't want to watch it, but personally I liked it. When the miniseries begins, the gun trace task force has already been indicted, and it kind of just flashes back to show how they got to where they were and how the case came to be. Because originally, at least in the show, because I don't know what the facts are in real life, I haven't researched it at all I know is what's in here, but they weren't even looking for the gun trace task force. It was a narcotics case if I remember correctly, and it just happened to tie into that because they found out that there was an officer, a Baltimore policeman, who was actually tied into that narcotics case, and that just kind of spun into like tied into everything else, and that's how they caught on to that. And you also get to see the rise of Wayne Jenkins and how his comrades and like fellow policemen became involved with the gun trace task force, and how they were also corrupt, but also that it was, I mean, even though he's responsible for his actions, the fact that there was bad leadership in the department and that people actually encouraged that behavior and promoted that or just completely dismissed it and looked the other way is a problem. So it wasn't entirely Wayne Jenkins, like a character said, I cannot remember his name, but he didn't invent anything. Like, this was there way before him. He simply just got better at it. And this is a big problem with the police because they are who the taxpayers pay to protect and serve. But this is also an issue with like any profession, where you may have a set of rules that you're supposed to follow, but then you are penalized, you may be punished for following the rules and doing your job the correct way. So I'm glad this story is coming out, not only to show people that this is not who you want to be, this is the wrong way to police, but how it affects people on both sides of the law. The policemen that want to do right, they want to do good, that simply have a job to do and they are afraid of doing it, or they're being blamed for doing their jobs as best they can with the resources that they have. Like the police commissioner, he was, I believe, the fourth commissioner to be hired in over 8 years. And anyone who's had a job knows that when you constantly keep shifting leadership, it's more difficult because that new leader may have a different regime, and if you have someone above them and they change it up, it's inconsistent, and it just makes it harder to do the job, especially if you're going to keep punishing people for doing the job the way the previous leader had it, and now you're being punished for doing things how you were told to do it. So if it keeps shifting like that, it's very difficult to get people to respect you, especially if they feel that you're going to be gone in a few months, if you're going to be gone in a year, like whatever. I'm going to have a new boss in like a year, so why do I need to listen to you? And he made a very perfect point, even though he's responsible for everything. But people in power often look for a scapegoat to either blame or to kind of just change something, and that's the only thing or the easiest thing that is to change, so you do that. I mean, the Los Angeles Lakers just had this problem when they fired Frank Vogel. He wasn't responsible for the failures of the Lakers. I mean, not entirely responsible. I mean, he does have some sort of liability with that. He should be accountable for some things, but everything that happened with the Lakers was not his fault. He just has to coach the team that he has. But what are they going to do? Fire Jeannie Buss? Fire Rob Pelinka? No, they're going to fire the coach because that's the easiest thing to change, the easiest thing to get rid of. So in work, it's the same thing. The person that's going to be easiest to fire and replace, that's the person they're going to fire. An issue I had with this miniseries is that there's like so many characters to follow and like names to remember, and even though there's not like multiple storylines going on, not many, it's kind of hard to like kind of grow close and care for characters when you keep jumping back and forth like that, and just like, it's very confusing at times. So the only one I really cared about was Wayne Jenkins, but that's mostly because of the performance by Jon Bernthal, who did a fantastic job. His performance was really captivating, but everybody else was kind of like, it's very generic. Like anybody could have played that role, so I don't really care. And because it kept shifting from time to time, it was really hard to kind of care for the characters and watch them develop. They were all kind of the same throughout the show. Another story I found interesting was the Nicole Steele one, who worked in the Department of Justice within the Civil Rights Division, and she was simply just trying to change things and write I can't remember if she wrote the consent decree or just wrote information to create a consent decree, which I can't even remember the exact definition of, but she was fighting for change. And she felt towards the end that no matter what she did, nothing was ever going to be fixed. It was just going to be perpetuated, and so she kind of just quit and gave up. So I believe they did the best with what they could. Like maybe some storylines or something could have been cut out to give more emphasis to certain characters that were a lot more important. But overall, I mean, I think they did a really good job writing it, and the way they pieced the entire case together, and a little bit confusing, a lot of names to remember in a short span of time. I didn't really have time to rewind much to remember everything that was going on, so I might be making a few mistakes, or maybe there's something I missed, but I believe it was well written. Not quite as well as The Wire. Again, The Wire like went on for a long time, so it expanded a lot better, but this show was definitely enjoyable and definitely worth binging. It was also great seeing a lot of familiar faces. A lot of the actors from the show are in The Wire, like the police commissioner, the father, I think his name was David Baker, who Herschel was just harassing for no reason. He was Slim Charles in The Wire, and there was a few others whose names in the show I can't remember. I mean, in The Wire, yes, just not in this one because I rushed it. But a lot of characters in this are played by people who were also in The Wire, so it was great seeing them again. And it actually led me to believe that this was like a sequel to The Wire or something, which I know there was a huge theory going on that this was going to be a sequel to The Wire. It's not. It's completely separate, and it's based on true events, not fictional ones, which is what The Wire was. But this is strictly based, I don't know how loosely or how strict, but it's based on the corruption within the gun trace task force within the Baltimore Police Department. That's what it's about. It's not no sequel, but it is still worth watching, worth giving a try. It may not be everyone's cup of tea because the way it kind of just goes back and forth and how much information you have to pay attention to, and it's definitely not linear, which is like something that people tend to prefer because it's easier to follow. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth a watch, even though it may not be perfect for everybody. Good. Jon Bernthal did a very good job leading the cast, at least supposedly on paper he led the cast. Didn't really feel that way all the time, but he did. Great job by him. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section if you've watched this. If you haven't, I do recommend it, but if you have, please Please let me know if you agree with me or if you have a different opinion. Please hit that like button, it does help me a lot. Subscribe if you have not already, and I'll catch you in the next video next Friday. See you then. Bye bye.